This video is for the content page titled the Hydrologic cycle. So we already learned about what the properties of matter are. And we know that it all depends, or the properties of matter are due to the fact that water is polar, which means that it has an uneven distribution of electrons. And since those electrons are negative, they carry a negative charge, any place on the molecule of water that has more electrons hanging out around it is going to be more negative. Anywhere that has less electrons is going to be more positive. So what we end up with, since oxygen has more protons, has more of a pull on the electrons, the oxygen kind of hogs up the electrons a little bit more, so it's more negative. Hydrogen loses the electrons, so it's a little more positive. Now let's go on and talk about the hydrologic cycle. The water cycle, the hydrologic cycle, most people learn this at a young age. Obviously, we know evaporation, condensation, precipitation, and then it repeats. Now, for our class, there's a couple of different things, but before we talk about the additions to those simple processes in the hydrologic cycle, I want to first talk about states of matter and states of water specifically. Sorry, that's a clock. Water can exist in three states: liquid, solid, and gas. And the hydrologic cycle depends on the change of phase between liquids, solids, and gases. Evaporation clearly goes from a liquid to a gas. Condensation is when the gas pretty much turns back into a liquid, and precipitation rains back down onto the earth, turns back into a liquid. If there is a very cold place, then there will be ice, so it will change to a solid after it freezes. Now, this simulation is nice. If we look at what a solid is, we're going to just do a very quick, simple intro on this. You'll learn this in chemistry. A solid means that the molecules or the atoms in the substance have very, very low energy. Since they have very low energy, they just bounce around off each other just a little tiny bit because they have such low energy, and they make a more rigid, solid structure. Now, if we heat those molecules up and we give them more energy, transferring energy from the fire into those molecules, it will eventually turn into a liquid, which we call melting. Now, as you can see, a liquid has more energy, so there's more movement between the molecules. Oh, we're losing a little bit as it's turning into a gas. Come back down, so we cool back down. Now, if you put even more heat into a liquid, more energy, more thermal energy, eventually those molecules will move around so much that they change phase and become a gas. Lots and lots of energy. So just like this picture, it's kind of all based on how much energy they have. The less energy, the colder we call that, is a solid, less movement in the molecules or atoms. A little bit more energy than a solid will turn to a liquid. It's more amorphous. And then lots of energy is a gas. And you can visualize it like this. Solids have very little movement, liquid more, gas the most. And that is how water is able to change through the processes of evaporation, sublimation, transpiration, condensation, precipitation, runoff, infiltration, percolation. Everyone knows evaporation. That is when the liquid turns into a gas, usually from energy input like the sun. Sublimation is probably a new one for you. It's when a solid turns directly into a gas, like when the sun hits a glacier. It can change right from ice straight to a gas. You've probably seen this also from super cooled gases like CO2. Turns directly into a gas. Call that hot ice. Transpiration is when, kind of think about it like plants sort of sweating or plants sort of like exhaling. And that's not a good example, but what happens is when plants take the water up in their roots, they're using the water to perform photosynthesis with the power of the sun. And when they open up their little pores called stomata on the bottom of the leaves, some of that water evaporates and is lost as a gas through the leaves. We call that transpiration. Condensation is easy, water vapor changing from a gas to a liquid. You see that on your mirrors in your bathroom after a shower or in the clouds. Precipitation is rain. Runoff is that rain running back off into a big body of water. Infiltration is when the water goes into the soil, and percolation is when it moves through the soil.